Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Anna Considine. She is an Edinburgh-based photographer. Hello.
Hello.
So lovely to meet you. I think we met over LinkedIn.
We did indeed, which has been really exciting, to be honest, because I'm so used to being really active on Instagram that it's lovely to be somewhere else. There's a lot of things I like about LinkedIn, so I'm really chuffed that happened.
Yeah, I feel like only in the past year I've really put more effort into it and it's actually paying off a little bit.
Yeah, similar to me. I'm sort of not quite in the stage of like it's bringing in like customers kind of thing, but It's definitely building up my network and it's just such a much more pleasant place to hang out. So yeah, I'm definitely becoming a slow but steady LinkedIn fan.
Yeah, I think it went through a phase of being a bit of a like sleazy Facebook about 10 years ago. And that's kind of like gone now, I think. Well, I don't see it anymore.
No, me neither. And I just sort of feel like it has the elements that I used to really like about other platforms like Instagram, where it's a lot of community, there's a lot of getting to know people, it's very kind of sociable, but it's not as obsessed with video, which isn't necessarily my favorite kind of platform or medium. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think I've just started doing, like my friend told me about doing B-roll reels. So like just videoing while you're like typing or something like that. So I've been doing those, but then I don't always get the time to do them. And I'm finding like I've then inadvertently put a bit of pressure on myself to do them. And I'm like, oh God, am I even getting anything out of them? Other than engagement. Yeah,
I completely feel you. I just feel like Insta's been on such a journey of like trying to transform itself and compete with TikTok that as a user, I've found myself just not enjoying it. And there's so much kind of demand for like, oh, you should be doing this type of thing and posting in this sort of way. And I just want to have fun. I just want to enjoy marketing my business. And I just feel like that's what's missing. And that's what's kind of being lost in that obsession with becoming the next TikTok.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I kind of want to just say fuck the algorithm and just do what you enjoy, because I think at the end of the day, that's how your personality shows through. And people, when you're marketing yourself, they're buying your personality as well as your skills, not just like the video that you've posted or whatever. Yeah. But it's so hard. And like I'm on TikTok, but mostly for like fun bits and bobs and then post little podcast bits. But TikTok's a whole different beast. If you post like 3 videos all together, it like doesn't show them to people, and oh God, I can't be bothered with it. I'm just like, cool, if someone sees it, great.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to protect my sanity, just post things that I'm proud of, and all of those little bits that are to do with the algorithm or optimizing for a specific platform, I just really can't be bothered with.
Yeah. It feels like a whole different beast to when we were taking pictures of like our food and putting that weird like filter on it, like, I don't know, 12 years ago.
Iconic times, truly. Like the peak of social media, 100%.
I went through and archived a load of mine and they were absolutely hilarious. There was like some of just me and Nath looking very young. There was like one of the guinea pigs that we had that was all like filtered. It was awful. It's like it was taken on a potato. It was really bad, but it was iconic.
It was. I think mine might all still be somewhere. I don't think I've archived them. They're on just an old Instagram account that I used to use. And now, after we record this, I'm 100% going to go back and look at my heavily filtered carbonara photos.
I love the fact it was a carbonara as well.
Yeah, I can remember it really clearly.
That's hilarious. So how did you become a photographer? Was it the carbonara picture that set it off?
I think in a sense it did. And I promise I'm not just saying that, but I originally started not as strictly a photographer, but as a kind of social media one-stop shop where I'd had a couple of people approach me because they found me on Instagram. And it wasn't necessarily that Instagram was starting to get big, because it was already very big at the time. It was 2016. It was pretty huge, but it was when businesses were really, really starting to get serious and figuring out their own ways of using it for commercial purposes, as opposed to all of us just taking lovely food photos. So in effect, it started with Instagram, it started with social media. But after, I'm not sure how long it would have been, it probably would have been a couple of years of trying to do photography, trying to do content creation and schedule it all on behalf of my clients. I just had a slow kind of awakening of like, oh, it's actually the photography that's what's pulling me back here. And much as I had loads of experience of writing content and was using that as part of my business and my work, it was very much, I was doing it because people told me I was good at writing, and not that it was the first and foremost thing that I wanted to be known for. And like, just to skip forward briefly, but now I've got one legacy writing client that I work with because I love them. They're a marketing agency that I write for. But I don't advertise that I work for anyone else. It's a very small part of my day-to-day life that involves writing. But yeah, over time, it became clear that it wasn't Instagram and it wasn't social media that was what I was coming back to and excited to do in my work. It was 100% photography. It just took a little bit of time to sort of finesse and figure that out.
I think as creatives, we go on these journeys where we try a bit of everything and then we go, actually, I really love that bit, but the other bit I'm kind of not that bothered about. And I think that's great. You've kept like one legacy client that you really enjoy. And I do think that's a huge thing of our careers as well. At the end of the day, you've got to enjoy it. Otherwise, you can't get the creativity out. It gets stuck in there. And, you know, we're there to play and enjoy what we're doing. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I do feel really strongly that we need to make our businesses enjoyable, simply because there is so much to it that isn't in its essence isn't enjoyable. There is so much of the stress that we all go through and that constant kind of financial worry that sits at the back of your head and doesn't quite go away, or you know, whatever, you know, there's many tasks that we can name that we can say that we don't love about our businesses. But I also think that part of what draws clients to you and draws, you know, business into you is that if you genuinely love what you do, people can see that. And I think that's really magnetic. And I think that has as much appeal as any other method of selling. I think people want to know that you are doing something you are super passionate about, and that becomes very obvious very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think when it shows when you don't want to do something, especially because we're in a visual medium, because I'm a stylist, so it shows when I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Or like you're just not enjoying it. And sometimes it's like almost snapping yourself out of it as well and being like, I am doing something fun. I'm like making products look really nice together, or, you know, propping, I don't even know what I've been propping recently. Food, a lot of food.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It draws people to you when you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the kind of the opposite is true as well, that it's really hard to promote something and put all of the work and effort and energy that's needed to promote a business into something that you aren't passionate about and that you aren't completely sold on. And I think now I think about it, a lot of the transition into realizing it was photography that I loved was because during the pandemic, I had all of this time away from photography. I deliberately said to myself, I don't want to stress about these guidelines that don't make sense to me. I'm just going to stop all shoots, focus on the retainer clients that I had for content writing at the time. I had much more then than I do now. And that was my focus. But it meant I had a huge pause away from photography. And it was a big wake-up call of like, oh my goodness, like, this is what I love to do. And I have all of these ideas that I can't wait to put into practice when we are allowed to be in the same room as each other. And at some point, I'm going to get to try all these new techniques and ideas out. And that was when I did my rebrand and started calling myself Studio Gently instead of just my name. And yeah, that was a huge kind of transition for me. And I know for lots of other business owners that the pandemic was a season of transition for them as well, like in all different forms. So yeah, I know I'm not alone on that one.
Yeah, I think you're bob on as well. I took a bit of time out just because we weren't really allowed in studios, and because I was at high risk, even though I caught COVID 3 times, so I could have gone in. I chose not to go in, and I took a break from it. And then I was like, actually, I know what I really love, so I'm just going to push for that side. So that's why I push a still lifestyle in now, and I dabble a tiny bit in model, but not really that much because I don't enjoy it as much. And I think sometimes you need that break because we were almost in a rat race and you've got to be productive all the time. And actually, you need to rest. You need to take time to recharge and focus on your business in a different way. So I love the name Studio Gently. I think that's really nice. It gives it a really nice, like, calm. I've got a very nice image in my head where, like, if you were to come and shoot with you, it'd be very gentle, very calm, very zen. Is that how you like to be perceived?
100%. And when I was trying to think of new names for the business that weren't my personal name, it was actually a client's testimonial that Gently came from, because one of my favorite pieces of feedback I'd ever had from a client was that she'd called me a gently powerful photographer. And
Wow.
I just thought that was so lovely. I'd never had the idea of gentleness kind of linked with power before. And it really resonated with the energy that I like to bring to photo shoots and the safe space that I always want to try and provide to my clients, because I'm so aware that having our photo taken is not our favorite thing for 99% of us. So yeah, the name Studio Gently was just born from, okay, how do I want clients to feel? And now so much of my marketing and everything that I do around the business is how do I recreate that safe space, that gentleness that I have in my sessions that I take such time and care to craft for my clients? How can I make people feel that if they're reading a social media post or if they're just browsing on my website? And that's been a really clear and really lovely North Star. I feel like in a world that's so obsessed with being brave, being confident, being extroverted, I think it's really beautiful to recognize that those aren't the only qualities that we need, and they're not the only qualities that we need to run a business. And I think it took me such a long time to accept that I wanted to own my own business, because I had such a firm image in my mind of, oh, really confident, really extroverted people, really bubbly people, or, whatever. These kind of people are the people that do business. And I'm not someone that fits into that mold, so I can't have one. But yeah, it was a comment that an old boss made that planted a seed that I eventually was like, hang on a second, there are people that are doing this in a way that resonates with me, and there is a place for how I want to do my work.
Yeah, I think it's just really nice. And I think it does come across on your Instagram, like we were just chatting before we clicked record. Your Instagram's so lovely and cohesive, and it just has a sense of calmness to it. And also what I really loved, which I wanted to say to you as well, is your email. When you email you and you get an email ping back and it says, my email hours are between this and this, here's this, this and this. I thought that was incredible. It was the best thing I've seen. So I've got like my working hours. Yours was incredible. It's like, book a shoot here, do this here, do this here. I was like, this is like the bee's knees. So good.
I can't remember. I think it was one of my clients that did it to me, and it's just the out of office settings. It's nothing fancy, but I realized that because I have endometriosis and I have a complicated mental health history, I can't do the typical 9 to 5 hours that people might expect from a business. But having that out of office set up so that immediately people know when I'm going to be online and when I'm going to respond, I haven't had those conversations I was expecting with people that would say, oh, why aren't you available at this time? People, I think as long as you express what your boundaries are in a respectful way, I think people are actually so much happier to accommodate them than maybe like our society and capitalism would have us believe. And yeah, I think that was a little tweak that I made. It's also in like my email footer, it says like a reminder of when my hours are and when my next annual leave is, just as like a really simple but effective way to sort of remind people when I'm about. And like I say, nobody's had an issue, nobody's ever queried it, and nobody's ever, made me feel that guilt or shame that I was expecting when I first considered doing reduced hours. It's just been accepted, and lots of my clients have done exactly the same thing. They've now turned on their out of office settings and added some information to help clients and help set those important work boundaries.
I think they're so important. So I've been, probably since my last endometriosis surgery, actually, I put an out of office on because I thought I don't need the stress of trying to heal and dealing with clients. So the only thing I had was I chased a couple of payments and that was it. And then from then on, I now put them on when I'm on holiday. And I was actually talking to a food stylist actually, and he was like, no, I answer stuff on holiday. And I was like, but your kids will remember you answering stuff while you're on holiday. And so at the end of the day, that work's always going to be there. You might miss a week because you're on holiday, but it doesn't matter. That you don't have to go. Everybody has different versions of success, but you don't have to be consistently on. And actually, I don't know if you feel this with your endometriosis as well, but if I overload, I then get stressed and it makes my endo worse.
Yeah, 100%. It always comes back to bite me. Like any time that I put in extra hours, any time that I ignore what my body's telling me, I get stalled by weeks or months or whatever of trying to recover and trying to get back to that version of health that is my norm. And yeah, if I do have times when occasionally I have sent an email at a time that's different from my out of office hours, or I've responded on holiday, my clients are like, whoa, what are you doing replying? Like, what's going on here? And it's so clear they don't expect that from me. And because I've communicated and I've made it clear what I need and everybody knows where they stand, there's no friction there. There's no like querying or second guessing or anything. It's just that people want to know what you need. And all of us understand that some people have childcare needs, some of us have health needs. It's so much more normal than it might feel to consider kind of in the early stages of that boundary setting. But we all have limitations. Like most of us don't work a weekend. Like why not make the weekend 3 days long? That's what I did. But, things that can feel set in stone are often not. So yeah, there's a lot more flexibility than we think there is.
Yeah, I agree with you. So how would you be able to tell me a little bit about your endometriosis journey? Because when I first got diagnosed, I was kind of like, what the fuck is this? And didn't have anybody around who also knew what it was. So can you like fill me in a bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I had horrendous periods as a teenager, just like my mum. My mum was never diagnosed with anything, but I was just told that hormonal contraception would help. And I went on the pill initially and then switched to the implant and had about 8 years solid on the implant with no periods whatsoever. And I loved kind of every second of it. It was like the peace and the freedom away from, puking and all of the other horrible stuff that had become quite normal with my periods. But during, again, the pandemic, that pause, I became really curious about cycles and what my period actually would look like if I had one again, and then became curious about coming off hormonal contraception after doing quite a bit of reading. And initially coming off was amazing, and I felt so connected with myself, and I really enjoyed the feeling of that clarity of, oh, this is happening because I'm ovulating, or this is happening because I'm in my luteal phase, or wherever it is. And yeah, it felt wonderful to begin with. But after maybe about 2 years of fully natural hormone-free periods, they just were getting to the stage where it was just completely taking over my life. I had a call or an initial consultation with a doctor who referred me to a gynecologist, and it was through all of that education that I realized that, oh, this level of pain is not normal. Apparently they're not meant to be painful at all. So
That
yeah,
blows my mind, that
it's
fact.
right. I know,
Yeah.
me too. I was a bit shocked by that, but the gynecologist did some checks, and it seems like I have relatively mild, comparatively mild to some endometriosis. So I've not had surgical interventions, but after being quite resistant initially, I eventually realized that hormonal contraception had given me a lot of peace and time away from pain and time away from the real worst elements of fatigue that I was really struggling with while I was having those hormone-free periods. So after being very resistant, I am currently on the implant, about to switch to the pill because I am having 2-week periods and hating them. Yeah, they're not as painful or as heavy, but they're still not fun. So yeah, I'm looking at hopefully just taking the pill and then taking it continuously. I'm hoping that the doctor will understand that I'm just really in need of a break and in need of a bit of kind of normality and whatnot. So that's kind of where I've got to with it at this current stage. It's not really, they don't really seem to have great suggestions for if we start trying to conceive. They've basically told me that I can have strong painkillers, but that there's not a lot else that they'll do for me, which I'm sure is a very common response from the GP. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had 2 laparoscopies, and the first one was with the NHS, and they found 5 or 6. They classed me as quite mild, but I was in excruciating pain, but they didn't realise I had, and I can never pronounce it right, adenomyosis as well. So they didn't realise I had both. And then when I went back to the doctor, and I remember this so vividly, I'd written notes on my phone because my brain fog just cuts shit out. It just goes, no, you don't need that. And then it's always at a pivotal moment as well. And so I was reading it, and he was like, you don't need to read from the endometriosis website. And I just was fuming because I was in so much pain. So I then got so angry, I went private for a private consultation, got seen by the surgeon who did all the scans, and he was like, yeah, it's in your lining of your womb as well. This is why you're getting pain here. This is why you're getting pain here. Because I get pain down my legs, up my back, the works, nauseous, brain fog, the whole lot. Sometimes look like I'm a bit drunk, but it's just the fatigue.
Yeah, I get that.
And then he cleared me out from my lungs all the way down, and he took pictures before and after. And again, I remember 2 stories here, because I remember when I came round and I was in private hospital, so there's all these old people getting their knees and hips done right in the kind of coming round area, and then the nurse kind of gently shakes you awake, and I had this billowing duvet on to try and help, and she just went, how are you feeling? And I was like, oh, fucking hell, I've had a great sleep. And I was just surrounded by old people. And then I just fell back to sleep again. And then the surgeon came round to see me while I was, when you eventually, the general wears off. But I was still attached to stuff, still had some fluids going on. And he was like, do you want to see the pictures of your insides? It's really interesting. And I was like, no. And he was like, but you're hooked up, so you can't go anywhere. So I'm just going to show you anyway. He had a great sense of humour.
Amazing.
But I tried the reason I found out I even had endo was because I got whacked on the pill really early, and had awful periods from the beginning. They put me on the pill, and then they said, "Oh, you've been on it for 10 years. We need to switch you out." And that's where the problems started showing, because it had sort of, the hormones had sort of suppressed it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I tried the coil, excuse me, and boy, that was a journey. I think I lasted 6 weeks, and it sent me west. Like, my mental health just dived, and then my body started to push it out, which so I was like looking, my tummy was like going in and out, and it was like starting to be pushed out, and like literally he took it out. There's another funny story there, I'll shut up about this in a minute, but I could talk about it for ages. But I remember like laying on the bed, because I'd rung him and just said like, this needs to come out, like this isn't funny, because I was continuously bleeding as well. So you're just like, I was on the verge of being anemic and just really like not well. So I was laid on this bed, and I had a nurse chaperone with me, and he was like, right, I'll start to get it out. And then he went, oh, I'd need more light. And this was in a hospital room with like loads of lights, right? Came back with a head torch.
Wow.
I was like, do you need some climbing rope as well here? Are we okay?
That's amazing.
I was like, oh, everything okay in there? Like, oh God. But I've been that's been 2.5 years. That surgery was 2.5 years ago. And I said to my other half, because it's the only way that they can get rid of it really is by cutting it all out. I've kind of resigned to the fact that I'll probably have another one in a couple of years. It's just, there's no real cure for it. I've had the whole, don't you want kids? That'll help with it. And my eyes rolled so far back, in my head, just horrendous. Mm-hmm. I've had all sorts of shit from GPs who they don't have as much knowledge as maybe they should have, but it just, you hit a point where you're just like, right, I'll go try and figure it out myself.
Exactly.
And at one point I was on 8 or more cocodamol a day from the pain.
Yeah.
So, it's just finding ways of coping. And I've been doing a couple of cold dips with my friend in like wild swimming in loose invert commas, and that's been helping my pain no end. So I'm debating getting a plunge pool, because I think it would just help. Like, if it helps, it helps, even if it's for 6 months.
Yeah. No, I just feel like the same as you have to do so much of your own research and your own kind of learning on it. And it frustrates me and it hurts me. I feel so like, I do feel a lot of anger about how little is known about endometriosis versus how much we know about what's going on the moon or like, other elements of our culture that were deemed kind of more important. And I think for me, the biggest like wake up to how much I've been through is that when I think of like, if I have a child and that child has periods, the amount of things that I would do to try and minimize the pain that I know that I went through and that my mum went through, it's just like I would move mountains truly to try and avoid my child feeling those same feelings of pain that I felt. And it does, it hurts, it upsets me that we're having to do so much of this research on our own and this learning and this self-education when there are many medical conditions that if we walked in and said, yeah, I've got this, they would know everything pretty much there is to know. But because this one affects like primarily cis women, then that's it, that's the end. And that hurts. That's not fair.
Yeah, I feel the same. I've moved through the anger and frustration, but that's only because I got passive aggressive in want of a better phrase, because I just then thought, no, fuck it, I'm going to go private. I got all my doctors, my surgeon's notes and got them sent to my doctor. to prove, like, shouldn't have cost me thousands of pounds to prove that, but I probably still would be waiting for surgery now, in all honesty, if I was on the NHS. And even then, you don't know quite what care you're going to get. That sounds awful. But, and you're so right, like so we don't have children. And that one reason was, if we had a girl and they had the same as me, I would be devastated. It would absolutely devastate me. And I think, like, I also wouldn't know how I'd cope with a flare up and a child.
Yeah.
It just, I'd probably implode.
Yeah. No, I'm similar to you, that it's a very open conversation whether we will have kids or not, because there is a question mark of fertility, but also there is how much can I step up and be the parent that I want to be, while also managing fluctuating energy levels and, at times, huge amounts of pain. For us, it might be likely that my partner is the kind of dominant parent instead of me as the mother, which could be an option. But yeah, it's upsetting that there are people that don't have that option that would still be wonderful parents, but maybe just not able to deliver the amount of childcare that people expect from birth parents. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. I feel like we should be way, way ahead with this. This should so be like old news. Oh, you've got endo. Oh, we've got you,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have fully embraced the naughty auntie and uncle role. We're fully there. We've found whoopee cushions, fake poos, all the kind of like fun stuff. You want garlic bread and chicken nuggets? Cool. I'll send you home with bourbons in your hands. Great. Like, we've fully embraced that side of it. And I think it's such a hard journey. Fertility is such a hard journey to go through, whether you choose to have children, whether you struggle to have children, or whether you choose not to have children, or the choice baby is medically taken away from you. It's such a difficult journey, because also of society's expectations that you get married, you buy a house, you have children, you have a dog, like, or a cat or a pet. And I think, like, there's other forms of family that don't involve you necessarily giving birth to your own children. And, like, I still consider myself a motherly figure, but in an auntie way, to my nephews and to my friends' kids. And they're like asking me random questions like, oh, what's this tattoo? What's this? What's it? And my little nephew said that I had a small brain the other day. I don't know how you've got to that conclusion, but okay, I'll take it. I was like, smaller than yours.
I just feel like we have really lost sight of how many ways there are to love, how many ways there are to contribute to the families that are around us. And I think I'm speaking on something that I don't remember all of the stuff that I've read about it, but that capitalism has really like force-fed this idea of a nuclear family, whereas when you look at other kind of cultures, other parts of history, you realize that there was much more of that, like we always say, it takes a village, but that village kind of vibe where there wasn't an expectation that you had to have your own children. It was just as meaningful and valid to be in that auntie role, which I love. I'm an aunt, I'm obsessed. My nephew is like everything to me. So we had a much more kind of balanced and much more helpful, like to those parents, much more helpful kind of communal vibe, because we need those people that are there to step in when a parent is too tired or needs that weekend away or whatever they need. Like that fun, energetic person that isn't tired from raising their own children has a place as well. And I do think that's a really beautiful thing and role to be in a little one's life if you care about children and if you want to have some element of childcare within your life, which like I think is entirely possible that that's the route that my life goes down, because I think there's so much meaning there. And I see that I can be so useful and so helpful in that role, and it matters just as much to me as parenthood does. I think it's a really important, necessary part of society.
Yeah, I'm 1,000,000% there with you, because I love it. Like when I go and see my sister and her husband and her little one, I'm like, right, let's play all the games. They can go off for their run. They can go off and have a lay-in. I'm like, right, you want to play this? You want to paint? He was painting me the other, like, just got his paintbrushes and just started painting me. I was like, okay, cool. And of course, all the colours went to like some sort of muddy, like icky colour with like a bit of green. Yeah, it was like, oh, great. Glad a womanized jumper. But it's just that I love that. And I think a lot of people think that when you're child free, you don't like children. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't like all children, but like I have a special place in my heart for all our friends' kids, my nephews, and like I love playing with them. But like you say, it's in a different way to their parents, because their parents are like, fucking hell, we've seen this puzzle like 20 million times. And I'm like, oh my God, you've got a new puzzle. And they're like, oh God, really?
Yeah.
Or like, even reading books to them.
Yeah. Exactly.
So good.
It is so good. And I just think as well, like, I love kids. I've always loved kids. But like, what is wrong with not liking kids? Like, I completely sympathize with why people would feel that's just not for them. And I think it's much kinder and better for the world for people that know they don't like kids to be able to choose the lifestyle that they want and not be judged for it, because it's just not a thing that needs to be judged. Then people feel compelled to have children because there's a huge amount of social pressure that's pushing them down a road that isn't authentic to them and isn't the life that they genuinely, truly, truly want. So, yeah, I feel lots of feelings. Even as like somebody who adores kids, I'm like, don't force it on everybody. That's not how the world should work.
No, I'm in agreement. There's a lot of people I can see just shouldn't have been parents. And there's a lot of people who really want it and can't have it. Yeah. And, there's space for all of us in the world. And I think there's definitely a space for the naughty auntie and uncle. We've got to be there. I can't wait till one of them turns 18 and goes, Auntie Shah, can we go and get tattooed? Like, yes, come with me. Where do you want to go? That'll be my legacy done. So did you go to university to study photography?
So I actually did French and German at uni, so absolutely nothing to do with photography whatsoever, but it still kind of links into photography in that I had a really clear goal of I wanted to have a job while I did my year abroad. All language degrees in the UK you do a year abroad for, and I really, really wanted to work. I knew that was what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have another year of university. I was ready to find a stage, was what I think they called them, and work somewhere in France. And I applied for all of the ones that I came across, and they were all hotly in demand, so I didn't get any of them. But I ended up as a teaching assistant for the year instead. So still working a little bit, but that was actually the first time I had significant disposable income, because our rent for the school that we were staying in, it was me and a kind of casual arrangement of other language assistants were staying in one of the schools that we taught at. But they only charged us, I think, something stupid like €100 for rent a month. It was absolutely absurd. And so it meant that even though I wasn't getting paid a crazy sounding amount for being a teaching assistant, my living costs were so comically low. And I was so used to living really frugally as a student that I bought a DSLR camera, a proper seeming camera for me at the time. And originally I thought, oh, I love makeup. I was really, really into makeup. I did all of the makeup for like lots of our nights out, and YouTube was getting really big at the time, and there was a really big like beauty community on YouTube. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a go at making some like tutorials and things, which were obviously absolutely shocking, and I cannot watch them. Couldn't watch them if you paid me now. But I was very, very much enjoying myself. And yeah, it just meant that I came back from my year abroad with this camera that I've been using mainly for video, but a little bit for photography. And then I walked into the shop that I'd worked at from, being a very young teen. My first ever like job experience position turned into a Saturday job in effect. And walked into there and they said, oh, by the way, we're looking for a product photographer. We need a photographer for the website. So if you know anyone, please let us know. And I was like, well, I've got a DSLR, so I could try and do it. And I was absolutely terrible. So all of the photography that I'd been doing for fun in France had not prepared me even slightly for the reality of like web product photography, and using kind of studio lights and making something that wasn't symmetrical somehow look symmetrical, and trying to smooth all of the folds and the kinks out of all of these various garments. There was so much to it, but when I started, I was really, really struggling, and I just was like, I can't let like this team down. Like, I've told them that I could do this. I'm going to work my absolute socks off to try and work out how to do this. And although they wanted me kind of primarily for the product photography, all of us kind of pitched in with each other's jobs. So sometimes people would do it instead of me if I was busy with a customer, and kind of vice versa. But by the end of the summer, I'd kind of reached my goal, and it was just the way that if you wanted it shot like quickly and the best, then you came to me. And I just remember like that huge feeling of pride of like, I really mastered this. Like, I came in thinking I knew enough and found out very quickly I did not. But I just, I'd given it my all, and I'd managed to figure out, the basics of photography that got me to the stage where I was able to deliver those ample quality photos for that website. So that was how I got started.
Product photography and styling is such a skill within itself. Some people say to me, because I really love doing the e-commerce styling, like still life stuff, give me like stuff to pin up, put on a mannequin, great, love it. I know how it's going to fold, I know how it's going to hang, done. And some people go like, how do you know how to do that? And I'm like, just from years of seeing the same stuff coming through, and I'm just like, oh, okay, is that, I can literally touch it. I wouldn't be able to tell you what kind of fabric it is, but I just touch it and go, oh yeah, I'll just need to do this or this, or just see where the seams hang. And like, it is a whole different ball game, and it takes an awful lot of skill to light that kind of stuff, especially if you've got, I don't know, reflective bins or a toaster or something as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think because it's that whole thing of, we see usually the perfect version of product photography. So most product photography is incredibly high standard. So it's very easy for us as consumers who aren't intimately acquainted with that process and what's involved to think, oh yeah, you just bung things down, and maybe people realize there's lighting, pop on some lights, and off you go. When in reality, there's so much kind of wizardry that goes into it, and there's so much patience that has to go into it, and meticulousness, and kind of an awareness of, fabric folding, what have you, whatever the product might be, but a visual awareness that most people don't have. Most people can't look at an item and know 100% for sure what's going to stand out as strange on camera, what's going to look off balance on camera, what stains it might have, or what bits of fluff need to be removed and whatnot. That just comes through careful experience, careful learning, and it is a hugely difficult skill, and definitely something that does take a lot of time. But like I say, we are so spoiled that we don't realize how much goes into it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember trying to explain when I first started styling, like trying to explain it to my mum and dad, and like showing them the website of the place I was working at and being like, yeah, so this was shot like this. And my dad was just like, what?
Yeah,
Huh? It
yeah,
takes so much. And then having retouchers make stuff look a little bit straighter and knowing their limitations as well. And
yes.
alongside ours is a whole nother arm to it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I do feel like even though what I do now is primarily portrait photography, it's primarily kind of personal brand photography, I still feel like that kind of a level of awareness that I was talking about and that alertness still was something that was super valuable to learn, and being able to make something look good without any props in a lot of scenarios and without anything to kind of disguise the blemishes or whatnot that might have been there. That was all really, really useful stuff that in any form of photography that I shoot nowadays, I still am grateful that I have that visual eye and I have that awareness and understanding of space and all of those elements that I learned in something that I don't really do nowadays, but that really did set me up for so much in the future. And yeah, I have, as I'm sure you can tell, I have so much appreciation and respect for anything that goes into product photography, because it's so not easy to do. And yeah, it's a fascinating kind of area of the world.
Yeah, and I think you're so right as well. It's funny how your journey has evolved, but those skills that you practiced initially still come through, even though your product is different because you're not shooting a mannequin, you're shooting an actual person. It's you still need these same like the same eye for it, the same like composition for how your shot's going to look and where to place people and oh your shirt collar's gone up or that kind of thing. It's definitely it's such a underrated skill, I think, in the visual arts, because we just kind of do it. I was saying this as well about I had some work experience people in shadowing last summer, and I was they said to me and the photographer, so combined we had about 40 years of experience, I'd imagine, that kind of level, and we were silently just moving stuff. He was moving his lights, I was moving the product, and the kid was like, how do you know how to do it? And I was like, I just know. It's because of the years I've put in to know that this kind of product is this kind of height, we're being shot from here, lights come in here, okay, I need to twist it a little bit to the left and it will look better, and I need to make sure this isn't like sticking out at a funny angle. And you just it's just experience, I guess, isn't it? And just learning from mistakes before.
Yeah, I just feel so strongly that mistakes are the best teachers, and
Yeah.
you are always going to make mistakes in business. There's never going to be a point in your business where you stop making some form of mistake. But that's why I've got it here on my desk in front of me, but I've got a little notebook that I'll journal throughout each project with a client, any sort of thoughts that come up or any ideas for stuff that I could improve or tweaks that I can make that would make things easier next time, because you can let yourself be defeated by mistakes and you can see them as a failing, or you can just recognize what they truly are, which is just the best teachers. And all of us have opportunities where you can go, okay, I can either learn from this or I can tell myself I'm not good enough and I've got to quit and I've got to stop. But if you can keep just focusing on like, this is the learning, what grace can I bring to the situation? What compassion can I bring for myself and for my client? Then you'll be able to navigate anything. And I think it's so easy to get very scared to mess up and very scared to admit that something's not right or what's gone wrong, whatever the case may be. But they're just normal. And even with like people that I hire, I'm not stressed if something goes a bit awry, because I know people are just people, and I know that things will get figured out. And I choose people because I trust that they will navigate those mistakes with grace versus expecting them to never make a mistake.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like mistakes, you learn from them. I learn from doing. So if I get something wrong, I'm like, right, hold my hands up. say, I was wrong there. And then you improve on it next time. And actually, the journaling thing's a really good idea, actually. I like that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. I'm definitely like wanting more people to take that idea and run with it, because I've had some awesome ideas. Like the latest idea that I can think of was adding a pre-session checklist that goes out to clients about 3 days before their photo shoot. And it's just like a last minute tick off list of, have you looked at where you're going to park? Have you got tissues in your bag? All these sorts of like little tiny things. But it was because I'd had a chat with a client and remembered to make a note of that thought, and then looked at it and thought, oh, this would make a really good checklist. I could do that in like 20 minutes, I'm sure. So it's really, really helped. And I think, again, it's just great at keeping me in that learning headspace so that my process is always going to get better. And I'm really proud now of my client process, because I've been so tuned in for so long on what clients need and what I can do to make that experience even better for them.
Yeah, I think it's similar to when you work in a big studio, having a pre-production meeting where you have a meeting a few days before, and it will either be a Zoom or a phone call. And it's like, right, have you got this, this, and this? Your props, you've got, you're going to turn up here, do this, do this. But sometimes it's the small things, like if I'm going to a new client, where to park stresses me out. So I don't know whether you do this, but I end up looking on Google and I'm like, right, okay, well, I can park there. Or it foxed me. I went into Manchester City Centre the other week for the first time in ages, and the car park that I used to park in is now being built on. So I was like, great. But had I have known this, I would have picked somewhere else or got the trap parked somewhere further out and got the tram in. But it's just taking that 10 minutes, like you say, to just check that you've got everything, not necessarily take it for granted that you've got everything sorted. And that it must make such a difference. I bet your clients feel so comfortable then. They're like, oh, okay, it's at ease. I can just tick off.
Exactly. And I think I really used to not quite neglect, because it wasn't quite an intentional thing, but I really didn't appreciate how much I could do for clients before their session and how much I could prepare them, and that it would make a difference to the session itself. And I think that is true even if you are, say, a product photographer, you're not a portrait photographer. I still think you get better results by having clients feel supported, having them be engaged in the preparation process, anticipating as many of their needs as possible. And so now, like, so much of my feedback is all about, oh, I felt so prepared. It meant that I didn't feel nervous on the day itself. Oh, I knew what to expect. It was like she'd read my mind, and all of these things. But it's just because I've been in the habit of staying in tune and responsive to those little comments that you could easily ignore. But if you pay attention to them and find a solution for them, it just means you end up in a position where you're offering this incredible experience to clients. And I feel so strongly about it, because that's where the magic happens. That's where you get clients that stay with you for years, and where you're not having to stress, year on year about your business, because you make people feel at home. For me, it's about them feeling safe, feeling held. And a lot of that comes from doing those little steps, those tiny, tiny things that might seem too small to mention to you or someone that's not in this situation, but to your client is massive. It makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, it really is. Again, it's part of your whole branding and feeling like you just explained it. I felt like I was getting a little hug. It's great. And I think like I can feel that if you're instantly putting me at ease. So I can imagine your clients just being like, oh, I can breathe. Yeah, I've got everything in my bag. It'd be fine. And we can have fun. Because I think sometimes you miss out on, when you're a little bit fearful of something or a little bit stressed out by something, you miss out on all the fun because your fight or flight takes over. When actually, like, getting your portrait taken for your business is going to be so fun. Like, you're not stood in a corporate world, like a bit like the end of year school pictures where you're on a horrible mottled background and you've got to sit and, really rigid. It's like you're showing your personality.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to genuinely think that all of that preparation I didn't even see it as mattering. And I really thought, well, it's how personable I am during a session, and it's how warm and friendly I am during a session. And I can say now that probably what I do in sessions isn't that different from now versus 5 years ago. It's not hugely different, but the preparation side of it is massively different. And the results that I've got now are so like leagues ahead of what I was able to produce 5-10 years ago. And I put it down to just that intentionality, that presence, and that mindful awareness of like what a client's actually saying and what they actually need. And that I feel like that gives me the confidence to know that I'm going to be okay. My business is going to be okay. I'm going to, still be here doing it. If I still want to be doing it in 10 years time, I'll still, I'll be here. And yeah, I really stand by that. That really resonates with me.
Circling back to you saying about your mental health as well, do you think that your way of working has stemmed from your mental health issues? Is that the right word that you've had previously?
Yeah. I would 100% say that it has. I had a psychotic episode about 6 months into my business, and my episode happened because I didn't have any work boundaries, and I just was a 24-year-old who'd never had to question her health before. There was nothing that had happened that I'd ever felt like, I have to worry about myself. I have to be careful about myself. And so I started my business and was just like, amazing. I'll throw every hour of the day at it. And hustle culture was massive at the time. There was a lot of kind of early morning routines doing the rounds, like even more so than now. A whole lot of stuff about, just entrepreneurism as a whole, I think was starting to get really trendy. And so I initially was like, this is the best thing ever. I love that I'm getting to do all of this work. But it wasn't sustainable. And even to a very young person with no mental health history prior to my episode, even I couldn't sustain the hours and the lifestyle that were being kind of praised on social media. And it just meant that I did burn out, and the burnout happened to be a psychotic episode, which I would recommend to precisely no one. It was horrible. But I had an amazing care team of really not industry leading because they're not an industry, but a kind of region leading, let's say, team that have been recognised. Actually, I think they've won awards for how innovative and how incredible they are. But my psychosis team were like, look, you can't do what you've been doing. Like, we know that so much of this episode happened because you were overworking. Like that lifestyle, it was kind of very nicely being told that lifestyle wasn't available to me anymore. We're going to have to try and put something else there in its place. And my CPN community psychiatric nurse, Ro, who is phenomenal, she was the first person that was like, I think you need a work phone. Like, why don't you have a phone for work and a phone for yourself? I think that would just let you separate yourself from your work a little bit. How about that? So we tried that first of all, because I was due an upgrade. So I just kept hold of my old handset and got a new contract for it. And then it turned into, okay, cool. Well, what else could I do? Like, what hours do I actually want to be doing? Do I want to be working these crazy hours, or is 5 hours-ish a day like a more reasonable thing to start with? And I've just kind of built it up from there. Like, a couple of years ago, I realized that I wanted to take more annual leave, and that I didn't want to be burnt out all the time and struggling to recover. So I now have either a week or 2 weeks off every other month, and that suits me so much better. And like we talked about, the whole out of office thing, kind of expressing when I'm out and when I'm available. None of the steps that I've taken have been things that people have queried or or judged me for, or if anything, the case has just been that they've inspired my clients. Like some of my clients now have work phones that initially when I said to them, oh, you might want to think about it as well, they were like, no, never, I couldn't. Or they've done other things like take their Fridays off. Like for me, that started in the pandemic because I had a client that I used to go in and see every Friday. And I realized because I couldn't see them while everything was locked down, I just decided to treat myself to Fridays off and knew that I could manage all the rest of my work around it because I've been doing it already. And I just thought, why don't I see how that plays out? And I just feel like hopefully there's a transition happening where more of us are taking that ownership of our lifestyles. And before we started recording, I actually said to Charlotte that I feel like if you took the health issues and the mental health issues out of my life, I think my lifestyle is really lovely. And I wish more people would consider having that flexibility with their work and doing things like I set my annual leave at the start of the year before I set anything else, which is what I do. And just letting that be their lives and not having to deal with the health problems and all of the other stuff that has come into my life and meant that I had to engineer it in a certain kind of way. I just feel like we'd all be so much happier for it. And why not be happier?
Yeah. Why not be happier?
Yeah.
And I think I'm with you on the work phone thing. So I'm at a crossroads with my phone. So similarly to you, I was getting like, I can hit points where I get burnt out. And I think if I had a phone, my thought is that I have a phone that's just for work, but also has all my social media on it. And then I have a phone for close friends and family, and it has no social media on it. It has nothing. That then I will actually chill out, because I think sometimes I'm looking at Instagram and thinking, oh, right, I need to post that, or like, oh, I need to comment on this because it's work. And then I'm like, oh, well, I should just have a quick look on LinkedIn. No one needs to look at LinkedIn on 10 o'clock on a bloody Sunday. So why am I looking at it? Like, nothing new is going to be there. So I'm at that pivotal moment as well where I think a second phone is going to be like, and it'll be like 20 people will have the number, and that'll be it. And it'll be like, if you're a kind of work colleague, you'll have my work phone number, and cool, I'll maybe see you at work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things that people ride with. People are fine. It's honestly not that big a deal to my clients. Yeah. But to me, it's a huge deal because it means that I don't see texts and stuff at times where I can't action anything because I'm out and about. And I don't look at my work emails on holiday by mistake or even on purpose. And yeah, it is a simple thing, but it just anything that gives you that space and that peace at a time when you need space and peace, I think is really, really worthwhile. And I wish that people were a lot less scared to do it, because I spend about maybe £8. I think it started as £6 on the contract for my work phone. It's really not a lot of money at all because it doesn't need lots of data. I only use it in the house, so it's on Wi-Fi, and that brings the cost right down. And none of my clients, I'm sure they're probably not even aware that they're just getting my work number. I'm sure that many of them are just going, oh, okay, this is her number, great. And that's it. They don't question it beyond that. But to me, it's just that necessary step for, I am a person, not a business. I have a business, but I am a person.
That differentiation. Yeah, it's so hard because you, like we were saying earlier, your personality also sells your business, but it's so hard to separate yourself out from that. And like, same as you, I love my business, I love doing the podcast, but I am still me as well, and I still need that time to rest and that time to chill out. And I think a lot of my friends are quite understanding, like if I'm feeling really tired and I don't answer messages, I'm just like, there's no offense taken, it's just I'm knackered. I don't have any brain power left for this conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important thing to do. I think I'm definitely going to start looking into it a little bit more because, like you, my actual current phone is under £20 a month because I'm not that arsed to buy the big iPhones and everything else. So it actually isn't that much money, really.
No, not at all. But if it's, £8 that's going to give you peace of mind, that's probably the best £8 you'll spend all month, like easily.
Yeah, massively so. It's really interesting. I'm finding this really interesting how you've put the boundaries in because, like I was saying to you earlier, I've started to do it the last couple of years and it seems really taboo, but actually it really isn't. To look after yourself and then you can put 100% into your business by putting these boundaries in. It just, yeah,
It's huge. And it does feel like to so many people, like when they hear my boundaries, it feels like it's a permission slip to them that, oh, I get to advocate for what I need as well. And most of us wish we were looking after ourselves more and wish that we were doing more things that we need. So having somebody there that's modeling that behavior and saying, whatever you need, by the way, is absolutely fine with me, I think it does create a sense of like comfort and a sense of like, oh, amazing, I can be honest about it. It's why, like, if I've got period issues, I'm always honest about them. Even if I'm chatting with like a cis man who's got no idea what it's like to have a period, I'll still make that step of saying it because I want to help foster a certain kind of world. And part of that is a world that we all feel a bit more comfortable in.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I think it's because I talk a lot as well and I'm quite open. If I'm having like fatigue or I've got brain fog or someone asked me to do something and I'm 10 steps away from the set and I can't remember what they've just said, I'm like, look, it's my period, it's my endo, it's my brain, just is. Apologies, but you're just going to have to go a bit slower with me. And I think this has then brought more conversation. And I'm actually having a lot more conversation with male colleagues who go, oh, my girlfriend's got that, or oh, my sister's like really struggles, or so-and-so struggles, or, and I think we're having much more open conversations and I'm getting a lot more questions, which I really like, because then I can explain, this is a big part of my life. You must feel the same. It's a big part of your life, but sometimes there's a bit of shame to it. And actually there shouldn't be that shame attached because it's not my bloody fault I've got it, but I've got a voice. So I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I do just feel like most men that I know are really quite curious about this side of our lives. And I was so cultured to keep this to myself and hide it from, I've got 3 brothers, tried to hide everything from all of them. And even in casual conversation, it was taboo to mention that was what it was kind of, I'd make every other excuse other than to say, I'm really struggling with period pains today or whatever it happened to be. And it's just not necessary. Like when I say to cis men, like I'm thinking of my financial advisor that I had a chat with like a few weeks ago, I said to him at the start of the call, like, I'm really sorry. It's like day 1 of my period, so I'm struggling a bit today. But I could see in his eyes that he was surprised, but kind of pleasantly surprised that I'd said it and appreciated that I'd said it. And I just don't want to live in a world where all of this stuff is kind of swept under the rug when the reality is that most people that don't have periods are curious about it or sympathetic about it, and have no idea what it's like. And my best friend that I used to live with, he has since told me about some of the kind of period positive stuff he's done with his female colleagues. And he was like, that's because of you, babe. That's because you told me about it. And what a lovely thing that this chap that's like doing really well in the NHS is being really sensitive of his colleagues' periods. I just think that's great. And we need so much more of that.
Yeah, I'm the same. And also, like, but I think because my husband's seen it from the start, to now, he's very much like, he'll check in with me, and, you know, even if he's at work, he'll ring and be like, how are you doing? You all right? You know, and because he's seen the very worst, because I don't know about you, I mask it a bit at work, and the mask is fully not there when, to the point he's like, could you put that mask on, please? Just for once. But I do think it's important, and like, we end up having these chats, real in-depth chats about stuff, and he's kind of really supportive in that way. And I think I've then, similarly to your best friend, I've then like asked people to put period products in their bathrooms at work, and, you know, just so that, like, not even just for me, because I also am, in my styling kit. Okay, go. In my styling kit, I've got like everything, and people always know that I've got painkillers or sanitary towels or tampons, whatever. So I was like, can we just make like a box, you know, of stuff? Not just so that I don't have to keep being called on, but like, so that it's accessible for everybody, because you never know. Sometimes your cycle's so off that you go, oh shit, I've come on. Or like, oh, I'm feeling a bit crap. Oh, that's why. And like, you know, we all get caught out. And I think that's such a nice thing that men are realizing that they can help too. And I think I've been doing a lot of reading about perimenopause and menopause and stuff as well. And because I'm so acutely aware of my body, I'm like, oh, okay, I want to know what's kind of coming. And I was telling my husband about it, and then I was asking my mum, and she was like, I don't really fully remember stuff. And, you know, it's just having that, bridging that gap of knowledge, because the knowledge has also changed so much in 20 years. And then chatting to my friends who are 5 years older, 10 years older, friends who are about 5 years younger, kind of like having these conversations and being like, oh, this isn't normal, and kind of realizing that we're all in it together, actually. And there is no shame in talking about it. Not everybody wants to hear ins and outs of it, but, you know, my thought is that if I'm vocal about it, I might be able to help one other person. And that would mean the world to me, that I've helped somebody who's been feeling shite. Yeah. Unnecessarily.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like what I was saying about, oh, if I had a child that had periods, I'd do everything I could for them. Like, I don't want anybody to go through that horrible feeling of, I'm feeling horrendous, I don't have what I need, and I can't talk about it, which so many of us that have endo, that's what our teenage years looked like, without even, you know, realizing it wasn't normal. So yeah, it's a rising tide that lifts all boats kind of thing. It makes it better for people that have periods, better for people that struggle with their periods, but also it creates, I think, much more accepting and much more pleasant environment where anybody who's going through something, even if they don't have periods themselves, but there's something that is a health concern or a challenge for them on that particular day, it's like, we're open about this, so just know you're safe to be open about whatever's going on for you. Like, this isn't somewhere that you need to hide, kind of thing.
Yeah, and actually I think if you're open about it, regardless of what it is, if you feel comfortable in doing so, it eases everybody in the situation. Because sometimes I feel a bit anxious, or I'm just not quite fully feeling right, and I'll just say, like, just go gentle with me today, I'm not quite feeling right, I'm not quite sure what's up, I'm just not feeling right. And then everybody accommodates. Nobody's gonna sit there and be like, well, pull your bloody socks up then. You know, everybody accommodates each other, and I think that's a lovely thing.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
So I've got one last question for you, and answer it however you wish. It is a very broad question, but what inspires you?
So I've been thinking about this, and I think it's quite a deep answer. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
But I just kept coming back to that when I had my episode, one of the hallucinations I had, which was by far the worst one, was that when my parents took me into A&E, because you can take someone to A&E for mental health crises, but they took me into A&E, but I was too unwell to understand what was happening at the time. And my brain started hallucinating that something was seriously wrong, and then giving me a hallucination that I was dying, that like I could feel, I know it's so horrible, but I could feel like my body closing down, and I could feel myself like drifting away kind of thing. It was really, really horrible. And that, because of the way like hallucination and psychosis works, it felt completely real. Like there's never any like insight when you're really, really poor with psychosis. There's not something there that's like, oh, by the way, this is just your brain. Like it just feels like what it feels like. So actually that experience, and then the kind of like rebirth afterwards of like finding out, okay, I've got a psychotic illness, that's not great, but I'm still me and people still love me. That's really kind of been like a little North Star, and kind of an awakening of like how beautiful life is, how lovely it is to be alive, and how much I had that I didn't appreciate before. And I always thought that I was a really grateful person, and I'm sure that in many ways I was. But I think there's something about going through an experience that completely alters your reality, like psychosis does, or like many huge like capital T traumas do. That for me, it was a massive reawakening of like, oh, I'm actually here. Like the odds weren't stacked in my favor, but I'm still here. Like amazing. And that to me has been the thing that I think inspires me most and kind of keeps me going most, that I don't want to lose sight of what's beautiful and what's lovely in my life, and how special my nephew is, and how much I love my partner, and how lucky I am to do the work that I do, and how much I enjoy the work that I do. I think that much as that hallucination was horrific, and again, not something I would recommend, but it did really give me a sense of a reawakening and a realization that, you know, life isn't a given, and we're lucky that we all managed to make it onto this planet at this particular time. And that definitely inspires me, that, you know, we get to do whatever we want, and we should feel like empowered to do what we want with our lives and make choices that honor the authenticity that we all need. We have a need for attachment, but we also have a need for authenticity and to be our true selves. And that definitely woke me up, I would say.
That is the most beautiful answer I've ever had. And I think it's so nice that you turned such a shit time into, you've almost like flipped over a complete 180 and just gone, life could have handed me a great big bag of lemons that I've got to drag around, but I've just made some lovely lemonade. And I think it's just such a beautiful answer. What a beautiful ending. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've really enjoyed our chat, and it's nice to be in the presence of another endo warrior and to have chats about it and really go in depth. And I've really enjoyed our chat.
Me too. This has been lovely. I just feel like any time that we get to connect over struggles, especially ones that we don't get to talk about as often as we'd like, I just think is really beautiful. So thank you for asking me on.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!